Hi readers, Chris here. Today I'm coming at you with a double review, two fantasy books to round out the month, and those are going to be Talindor's Guest by Charles McGarry, aka Bookish, and also the Enchantress Returns. This is the second book in the Land of Stories series. I'm going to start off talking about Talindor's Guest, which I have been procrastinating talking about, but I was waiting for the right moment because little background story on this book. I actually won a copy of this book from a giveaway that David did over on his channel, David's Book Reviews. And at the time, I won this and one other book. And when I received this book, and I was like, oh, Charles McGarry, I don't know who that is. Well, fast forward a little bit, and I finally realized or put together that Charles McGarry is actually Bookish Chaz. If you do not know Chaz, I mean, how can you be on BookTube and not know Chaz? I am so thankful to call Chaz a friend, a fellow booktuber friend, and so that made reading this book really exciting. I will say I'm always nervous to read books by people that I know because what if I don't like them? You know, I don't want to be put in that position, but I am happy to say that I really enjoyed this book. If you saw my last reading update, you will know that I put this book higher than some other like really popular stories like Joe Abercrombie and The Blade Itself. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, the setup of this book is very simple. There's a man that's known as the Traveler, and just like his name says, he travels around different worlds, different universes, different planets, and he collects stories. He is a collector of stories. Well, one day, he arrives on this world, this kind of distant, desolate planet, and he meets a dragon named Talindor. Now, Talindor is he's kind of like a smog type dragon where he's been alone for a while, he's kind of grumpy, he's kind of cranky, and he really wants to eat the Traveler, but the Traveler says, hey, I'm going to tell you a bunch of stories. If you like my stories, you should let me go free, and Talindor agrees to this. What follows after that is exactly what it sounds like. It's this Traveler telling a bunch of different stories to Talindor. So for all intents and purposes, this book is a collection of short stories. But unlike a normal short story collection, these are like nested into a bigger story, which I think is super cool. That is a super cool concept. It's not just a collection of short stories, it's a collection of short stories nested into a bigger one. Like any collection of short stories, there are some in here that I absolutely loved. There were some in here that I was like, okay. There were none in here that I disliked, so let me just be clear about that. But obviously there were some that I liked more than others. A couple of my favorite stories in this collection are The Ink Master, which is a story about it's basically like a magic tattoo artist. Like he uses ink, but to actually like change reality and stuff, which is super cool. Another story that I thought was really cool is this one called The Forsaken. And in this short story, there is this race of women that have been like genetically engineered and bred to be servants to this kind of ruling class. And it's kind of one of those, it's a story, a trope we've heard before where, you know, the lower class kind of rises up against the ruling class. But the fact that these are like women who have been genetically engineered to be one thing and then they kind of turn into something else, like as a fellow female, those stories always really speak to me. Another really good one is this one called Hippocrene, which is basically about this guy who gets pulled into this like epic battle of good versus evil, and the good side needs help, these creatures, so they go to find a human to help them defeat their enemies. And like I love how a lot of these stories are like very like epic in scale, but they're short stories, so they're very like quick to read and easily digestible. I feel like if you are a lover of fantasy, there is definitely something in here for you. That's the beauty of having short stories, because they're all different, and the ones in this book are all very different. They're all very unique. Totally different characters, totally different settings, and it really feels like this traveler has been everywhere and seen a lot of different things. So it makes all of these stories feel unique. So whether you are someone who likes action, adventure, romance, even humor, there's something in here for you. So I really, really, really like that. Without giving anything away, I will say that the one thing I would have changed, and sorry, Chaz, your book is lovely how it is, but I am a big fan of dragons. I love dragons. And what happens to Talindor at the end, I wanted something different to happen. And I made a comment about this on Instagram, so Chaz will know what I'm talking about. But I would have liked a different ending for Talindor, but that's okay. I still really, really enjoyed this book, as you can tell. So if you are looking for a new short story, fantasy type thing, definitely check out Talindor's Guest and give it a try. Next up, I'm going to be talking about the Enchantress Returns. This is the second book in the Land of Stories series by Chris Colfer. Now, in the first book of the Land of Stories, we had two twins, Connor and Alex Bailey, and they discovered that there is this alternate world that's called the Land of Stories. They discovered this world through a book that was given to them by their grandmother, and in the Land of Stories, we have all of the classic storybook characters that you know and love. So we're talking Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Little Mermaid, there's dwarves, there's witches, there's Little Red Riding Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, Goldilocks. I mean, they're all in here. In the first book, they kind of battled the evil queen. So think Snow White's stepmother, evil queen. In this book, they are returning to the Land of Stories, but they're returning because the land is under threat from a new villain known as the Enchantress. Now, even though they call her the Enchantress, and I believe her name is Azima in the book, for all intents and purposes, she's Maleficent. She's Maleficent. She's the one who cast the sleeping curse on Sleeping Beauty's kingdom, which means she's Maleficent. Now, I was really excited going into this book because Maleficent is one of my absolute favorite, Disney villains of all time. I mean, when I was a little girl, Maleficent absolutely terrified me. I have a very vivid memory of being 4 or 5 and hiding behind the couch in my parents' living room because I was terrified when Maleficent turned into that big dragon. So I had very high expectations going into this story. And I have to say that, let me back up for a minute. I liked this book. I like going back to the Land of Stories. I like the characters. I think they're all super fun. And I liked the Enchantress, but only to a point. What I didn't like about the Enchantress is the reason that she became the Enchantress is basically because of her romantic relationships, her relationships with other men. And I know that in the Angelina Jolie movies, they made it she was a woman scorned and all that sort of stuff. But I'm kind of done with that. When women get their heart broken, they turn into crazy people. I'm kind of done with that. The story is a few years old, and obviously it's for middle school grades, so I'm probably reading into it a little bit too much, but I can't help how I feel. Similar to the first book, in the first book, the twins had to go around and collect all these items to cast a spell. In this one, it's a very similar plot where they have to go around and collect all these items again to build this weapon of power. So on one hand, I wish they had done something a little bit different from the first book, because it's basically the same plot, just a different villain and different things that they're collecting. On the other hand, I do appreciate that they went to new locations. So, for example, there is a Snow Queen in this story. She was new from the previous book. The harp from Jack and the Beanstalk, the ogre's harp, she was there. They got to climb up into the giant's kingdom, and they also go under the sea and meet the sea witch. So I like that they got to go to new locations and meet new people. I just wish that the plot had been like slightly different from the first one. So while I did enjoy this book, I still think it's cute and all that stuff, I didn't enjoy it quite as much as I did the first one. One of the good things, though, that it does have in its favor that I do have to give it credit for is the way that it ends. I appreciate the way that this book ends, because up until this, without giving anything away, up until this point, Connor and Alex have very much been a package deal. They're twins, they're brothers and sisters, they're always together, they do everything together, they have the exact same story. By the end of this book, something happens that separates the twins. And I don't mean like, well, I won't tell you exactly what I mean. I'll just say that it separates the twins and it gives them the opportunity to have their own journeys in the future. And I think that's going to be really important for this series going forward. Especially because they were 12 in the first book, 11 or 12, they're a year older here, they're going to keep getting older. Like at some point, they need to become their own people. Now, technically, having read the next book, I know kind of where it goes. But I will say that everything that happens at the end of this one helps set up the rest of the series. So I have to give it credit for that. Overall, I did like The Enchantress Returns. Like, I didn't hate it, but I do think that there were some things that it could have been better at, and I do think that there were some things that are lacking. I'm still going to continue with this series. I still enjoy it that much. I just hope that in the future we'll have some better villains, some better character development, and a little bit of a different plot. That brings me to the end. Those are my reviews for Talindor's Guest and The Enchantress Returns. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about both of these books today. Things have been a little crazy over here in the Chris house with the new animal, so I haven't been doing a lot of videos or pictures with ferrets in them, but Snowball happened to be around. She's sleeping right now, but I figured she can make a little appearance. If you stuck around to the end of this video, you're now being rewarded with a snowball. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff coming your way soon. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching and happy reading. Bye. Can you say bye, Snowball?